Dude, I actually just got like the best idea. Okay, so I got an idea for a cartoon, and the kid goes to space and— Dude, it was canceled. What? I haven't even pitched it yet. They canceled the sequel too. Damn. Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm confused. Recently, Netflix has been part of a conversation about password sharing your streaming account with family members and friends. Starting 2023, they have now made watching Netflix on vacation or in your college dorm room a lot more confusing. Little tip for any other businesses getting the same idea: don't underestimate the consumer. People are inevitably going to figure out VPNs and plugins to solve the issue you created very quickly. This is apparently to prevent people that are not you from using your Netflix account, and it's very stupid. You'll soon have a lot more people sailing the 7 seas with skulls on their hats as your subscriber numbers decline in perpetuity. You do it. So Netflix has recently stated that this announcement was an error, and they are now backpedaling on their statement, claiming that it was never intended to be rolled out to the US. They say this after months of press releases and news leaking that this was going to happen in early 2023.
I was just kidding! Come on, you guys know I was just kidding.
And they conveniently only say this after overwhelming backlash from communities online and an explosion of protests on Twitter. Apparently this update is only intended for Costa Rica and a handful of other countries. Okay, little reminder to let your voice be heard with stuff like this. Regardless, I'm kind of annoyed by this personally, especially when this is just one of many questionable decisions that Netflix and HBO Max have been making recently. And I'm not just talking about Twitter being mad about something stupid. These are data-oriented executive decisions, usually done for tax reasons, that are genuinely going to reflect negatively in the animation industry and television in general. And the industry they're standing on is pretty shaky already. It's a valid and understandable concern. HBO Max is one of a dozen new streaming services in the digital age, with watching your new favorite TV and movies for a monthly fee of anything from $8 to $12 a month, sometimes more. And it goes without saying that we're entering a new generation of media. Keep in mind that a lot of people still go to movie theaters and watch cable, a surprising amount actually, but nearly 59% of people in US and international surveys have openly said they prefer streaming because of fewer ad breaks, cheaper prices, and a diverse selection of content you can watch instantly. Not to mention the user interface on some of them is pretty good. Back in the early 2010s, Hulu and Netflix were pretty much the only major streaming services online. After Blockbuster and Redbox were quickly losing favor to more convenient options. To be fair, Redbox is still surprisingly active, but Blockbuster is now infamous for being the star of the documentary made by Netflix, where they tear him a new one. But to sum it up, streaming is winning, especially with the amount of options there are. More and more people are using them every day. However, it's my personal opinion that in the current landscape of streaming competitors, the most successful ones need to be very careful with their current strategies. 1 or 10 major steps, like canceling a beloved show, bumping your prices too much, and you lose millions of subscribers. But a big reason the successful few used to persevere is because of one thing: they listened to the data. That data in specific is how often people are clicking and watching, especially within the first 2 weeks of release. And this has sort of become Netflix's golden rule lately. Studies show that the first 2 weeks can supposedly determine the future of any show or movie they release. Shows like Squid Game, for example, had a massively successful 2 weeks. And the irony of this is that Netflix has recently tried to make a real Squid Games happen. It was a complete mess. You can look it up yourself. But anyway, it's a strategy that's worked very well for many shows and movies. But I'm here to argue that we're at the tip of an iceberg that's about to crash and split into 12 different pieces. Streaming has quickly become a very Game of Thrones-esque type who gets the Iron Throne sort of thing. By the way, I watched it recently. It was very good. Weird ending though. I'm not going to explain it. And if Netflix and HBO Max neglect the definition of a cult classic and ignore the outcries of people on social media, then they are probably not going to be at the top. To sum up the current situation, HBO Max was in the headlines a couple months ago for removing dozens of different animated TV passion projects and otherwise interesting content that were quickly blooming in underground communities that were saddened by the news. And the creators of these shows were given little warning that not only is it done, it's gone from the platform entirely. And that's kind of messed up. Not to mention Netflix has also been quietly doing this as well, with various cancellations, followed by removing some of their best content despite millions disagreeing. And I'm not necessarily talking about when The Office moved to Peacock. That wasn't Netflix's fault. But removing Arrested Development, including the 2 seasons they produced, is definitely their fault, and I think it's very stupid. Because my point is, the back-end data of your service can only tell you so much, especially when the content you're removing hasn't been given a chance to prove itself. It's very unfortunate, but basically, that's what's happening. Many shows before and after streaming services often didn't even hit their stride until around season 3 or even 5. So canceling major word-of-mouth successes after just 10 episodes is inevitably going to bite you hard in the ass later. Like, imagine canceling Community or Parks and Rec after season 1. It just doesn't make any sense. And imagine if a show like Firefly— oh, wait. Sorry. You can't keep getting away with it. You can't keep getting away with it. So this is why I want to quickly talk about something that I've found very interesting in personal development that can also apply to anything that takes time and effort. I present to you the Chinese bamboo tree. For example, a TV show can be a lot like a seed that you grow in water every day. When you release it to the world for the first 1 or 2 years, it might seem like not much is happening at all. The same applies to the Chinese bamboo tree. The first year, there was no growth at all. Year 2, nothing. Year 3, still nothing. But the truth is, all of the growth is happening underground. Because on year 5, something amazing happens. You start to see it sprout, and within just 6 weeks, that bamboo tree can grow up to 80 feet tall. Because all this time, it's been developing a complex root system that we only see within the last year. Now imagine if after a year and a half, you just gave up and stopped watering it. This is what's been happening to shows like Inside Job, Cuphead, The OA, Dead End, and even Johnny Test. Netflix just gave up because they couldn't see the massive underground fan bases these shows were developing at a rapid pace. Inside Job is an interesting case too, because you can see the amount of engagement it gets on TikTok and Twitter. In fact, this show actually gets 3 times more engagement on Twitter than anything on Netflix's main account. The word of mouth for these particular shows, animated or otherwise, is enormous. So, why? One of the most popular theories for this recent wave of cancellations hinges on the news of Warner Brothers Discovery recently merging into one. Not to mention AT&T is the owner of HBO Max and a lot of the media we watch today. So some people like to blame the CEO, David Laszlo, for this emerging trend of recycling content for tax breaks. But canceling shows like Final Space, Infinity Train, or Inside Job is not just the result of a new boss. Cancellations happen all the time, and these kinds of decisions are usually made by multiple people. The real question is why so many of them have been happening in the past few years. And to really answer that question, you gotta put yourself in the shoes of being the proud owner of a major streaming company. When you do that, suddenly things like Netflix canceling the Gorillaz movie, or HBO suing Paramount for exclusive ownership of South Park, pretty much levies in comparison to Warner Brothers Discovery losing $2.1 billion in just the 4th quarter of 2022 alone. Because in total, Warner Brothers Discovery has a whopping $50 billion in debt. Only 7 of that recovered from the very tax breaks that destroyed a massive catalog of animation and indie potential. The very same tax breaks that people like you and I, and cartoon fans everywhere, are pretty upset about. But when you're one of the big boys in an ivory tower, it's pretty easy to miss that one indie show that could have turned into an incredibly profitable payday. This kind of thing happens way too often, and I think it's a genuine problem in the industry. Sometimes it's hard to imagine $50 billion in any context. But think about this. Elon recently bought Twitter for $44 billion. The Zuckerberg Facebook-owned metaverse cost $35 billion to create, a project which may now be scrapped entirely. So when you think about it, Warner Discovery's debt is the net worth of basically an entire company. That's pretty bad. Any company facing this kind of debt is bound to be desperate, or at the very least on high alert. This could also explain why Netflix is supporting a project in Japan that's using AI to create all of the backgrounds. They claim it's because of a labor shortage, but the truth is I think it's almost definitely to save money. Because if you're a massive company like Netflix that's really struggling to find artists, you're either lying or not paying enough. I see so many talented artists looking for work on a daily basis, with every culture, background, style, and personality you can think of. It maybe goes without saying that AI-generated art taps into a deeply woven insecurity that people are going to lose their jobs to robots. But honestly, I don't think think AI can ever fully replicate the various different styles and talents that make a cartoon. Your movie about aliens taking over the world won't be the same if it doesn't have that sense of urgency and mortality that a lifeless robot can't possibly comprehend. Any story needs humans to create it and listen to it. A robot can draw a house or a dog, and it can have some pretty good ideas, but you need humans to turn it into a story that has the subtext to understand an inherent emotional core in its message, which leads me to my next point. Netflix is one of the first streaming companies to realize that you can throw 100 projects at the wall, but only one of them really has to stick to make your money back triple fold and then some. But I'm starting to worry that humans are not nearly as much a part of the conversation as they used to be. In the past few years, it's been proven that big companies are truly at the point where a carefully crafted AI algorithm can supposedly tell them everything they need to know. It really doesn't matter anymore if people love or hate a show en masse. It's the numbers that tell you everything. There's probably a few examples you can think of shows that were about to burst in popularity, but they just stopped. You may have heard of a Disney Plus show called She-Hulk that recently became popular. And spoilers ahead, by the way. But at the very end of the show, they make a joke about the entirety of Marvel being run by an artificial intelligence named Kevin. In the show they make a joke about an entire show getting cancelled because of the algorithm. And this executive goes on about a bunch of nonsense regarding taste clusters and social engineering, completely removing humans from the equation. The future of artificial intelligence is concerning, to say the least, but it's also fair to say that the humans of these companies are still going to be making a lot of weird choices in creative spaces for quite a while. You ever hear the story of the monkey who randomly picked a bunch of stocks and made more money than any of the humans? I'm just saying, I kinda get it now. And I speak not just as a fan of cartoons, movies, and TV, but also as a curious outsider that sees the many questionable and borderline amateur business decisions that are being made on an almost daily basis at this point. Especially when some of these decisions kinda suck. Inside Job really bugs me too, because they actually promised a second season for this show. If you know my channel, you probably know I talk about Club Penguin stuff. This same thing happened to a game called Club Penguin Island, and they weren't even told about it until like a week after it was already decided. And honestly, that's a dick move, man. Not to mention the fully filmed $75 million production of Batgirl that was never released. What in the fuck? Like, sure, maybe it was a bad movie, but it was already done. Audience testing reported that the movie wasn't that bad. But even if it was, why was this never brought up in the other 12 stages of production? Like the screenplay, table readings, filming, casting. I have to imagine a finished production going unseen is incredibly frustrating. And honestly, one of the dumbest things you've ever done under the veil of corporate strategy I've ever seen. An article recently came out where the CEO of Netflix claims that they have never canceled a successful show. And the funniest thing about it is that right below the tweet is a bunch of people proving them wrong. It's like there's a big pile of money right over there, but you're ignoring it to spend $50 million making the Stranger Things kids look 10 years younger. Goofy as hell, man. You had to have seen that the marketing for these shows that you own is working incredibly well, and that kind of thing is great for the long term. Canceling Infinity Train really sucks, but also making it completely unwatchable on your platform as well is very strange. It's worrying because as an artist or a developer of any kind, if you're making something for HBO Max, it could get canceled and removed within the same year. I just don't get it. Shows like Breaking Bad didn't really blow up until around season 4, and it was hard to say when it was going to blow up. My point is, you need time. You have to give a working machine of a television show with many different cogs and talents behind it time to grow and evolve. And I understand that the market is the market. Some things will be successful and some things won't be. That's just how it works. The market of entertainment and otherwise has always been a beast that's hard to tame. It's unpredictable as trends constantly change, but when those things get really popular and they're at the verge of getting even bigger, I honestly think that's lightning in a bottle, and canceling it is stupid. Deleting it is even stupider. This is a PSA not just to HBO Max and Netflix, but also to Paramount Plus, Apple TV Plus, Disney Plus, Discovery, Peacock. Please strongly consider investing more in animation, and give the projects you currently have time to flourish, and grow into something bigger and better than you could have possibly imagined. Honestly, support the weird stuff too, like Smiling Friends and YOLO's Silver Destiny. They're fun, and I'd recommend giving it a chance, because imagine how frustrating it is when you're working on something, and working working on something, and then you smack into a wall. It is humiliating and destroys the motivation of artists to share their next big story with any of the giants of the media when it's a constant coin toss on whether your stability and patience will persevere. I'm not saying that competition is anything new, I'm just saying it's becoming harder than it's ever been before. And then you're just putting salt in the wound of your existing IPs. That's just not a wise decision by any means. Nearly 25,000 people have signed a petition to bring Inside Job back and reverse the cancellation. And there are many other petitions like this for tons of other shows that have been cancelled or removed entirely. Some of these petitions are just people saying, please let me watch it again. I just bought HBO Max and now I can't watch it. I encourage you to check them out and let your voice be heard, because it is our voices being heard, which is a big reason why Netflix has changed their minds about password sharing. And I think we could do that for other things too, so I'd say it's worth a try. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Bob. Good vibes.